This talk show business typically works when you can hear people and they can hear you incredibly. Welcome to the Voice of College Football on a Tuesday afternoon, slightly afternoon Eastern Time, our regularly scheduled call-in show live stream for a Tuesday. And as soon as I get some more folks on the line, I will explain what just happened. In the meantime, for those of you that are watching us for the first time, or maybe a second or third, but are a bit unfamiliar with the channel, my name's Mark Rogers. This is the Voice of College Football. We talk college football every day, typically multiple times per day, multiple posts per day, multiple live streams per day, typically call-in shows. So if you love college football, this is your home, this is your place. And for everyone, again, filtering in, I will take you through my saga, but we will get on to the topics at hand in the world of college football. I had posted a link earlier in which I'd given all of about 37 seconds of thought on what today's topic should be, and my mind was blank. I came up with nothing. I checked the news. There didn't seem to be anything, and doesn't seem to be anything breaking right now. Nothing. So I didn't have anything. So I went with the topic, Ask Me Anything. And then I came across a couple of topics as I was messing around with this audio issue, as I'm seeing their reports on social media and out of the University of Alabama in particular about expecting full stadiums this fall, which is good news. I'm going to wait to see how it plays out. I'm not going to get that excited, but I believe we should be in full stadiums this fall. What I mean when I say I believe, that means I believe that's the way it should be. I'm not predicting that. When I say I believe, that doesn't mean that's a prediction of what the powers and the authorities that be are going to mandate. They haven't shown to have the best judgment in many cases. So again, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Keep in mind that we've got a Patreon page that we would love to have you on that costs about 15 or 16 cents per day. You get exclusive live streams there, watch parties during the college football season. Maybe we'll do a watch party of some sort during the off season. You get my exclusive predictions there, and we have a good time on Patreon, and many of the people over there just want to help build the vision, build the channel, and do it by contributing on Patreon, again, at about 16 cents. If I round down to 16 cents, if I round up, it's 17 cents per day. And then you get your recommendations and requests over there as well. So I'm constantly asking the folks on our Voice of College Football community on Patreon to let me know, what do you want? What do you want to see? What do you want to hear? What do you want? And I've received an insider look at the Voice of College Football, so we will supply that. First call of the day. It's good to have audio. Good to hear everyone. Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? David, I'm doing well. What's going on today?
Good to see you back. I know you're having a little bit of technical issues there, so happy to be talking to you.
And as soon as we get off the phone, I'm going to explain exactly what happened. Not that anyone cares, but I'm still, for my own cathartic approach to it, I'm going to explain what happened. How you doing today, Dave?
Excellent. Just wanted to talk, as always, a little college football with you. I got some questions about quarterbacks for you, especially the ones coming up into the draft. I had seen that, and I mentioned this to you before, that Zach Wilson had moved ahead of Justin Fields on some draft boards. Had you seen that?
I have seen that, and I've more or less heard about it. I don't look at any draft boards, but I hear from other people like you and just other people that I come in contact with. I have never looked at a mock draft. Well, I shouldn't say that. That would be a lie. I'm sure I've looked at a mock draft at some point in my life, but I don't it might be 5 years since I looked at a mock draft. I don't look at mock drafts. I could care less. And I have great respect for Todd McShay and Mel Kiper in particular, so it has nothing to do with them. I truly do, especially Mel Kiper.
Okay.
But I just don't care. I want to see the draft, and I want to see the actual outcome. But what I'm hearing, and in particular, Chris Sims was on, I believe, the Colin Cowherd show the other day, and he was talking about that he even likens or compares Zach Wilson favorably with Trevor Lawrence. He likes Zach Wilson that much. He doesn't see a difference in talent between those two.
Really?
That's according to Chris Sims.
What was his evaluation? Because you would still put Fields number one, right?
Pardon me?
You would still have Fields ahead of Wilson, though, correct? I'm sorry.
I would.
Okay. I was just double checking, because now let me ask you this question: out of these two quarterbacks, who has a better NFL career, Kyle Trask or Mac Jones?
I'm going to go with Mac Jones.
Okay.
He has more prototypical size. When I look at, and I don't know their measurements. I don't. That's another thing I don't look at when people bring up measurements on people, on players. I usually read them off when I'm going through recruiting analysis, but I don't. Like sometimes somebody will say, how tall is so-and-so? And I'm just going by watching them on the field and thinking, oh, they look about. But Mac Jones he looks a little taller, a little bigger than Kyle Trask. I think he's just got more of a prototypical size to him. That's the first difference I'm going to come up with. Other than that, unless we really reviewed the Florida receivers, which I think they had a top 5 unit in the country. Mac Jones
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and Alabama's was the best, in my opinion.
Sure.
That Mac Jones completed 77% of his passes. Mac Jones didn't make the mistakes that Kyle Trask did. Kyle Trask had a remarkable year, and for much of the year, he was my Heisman winner for most of the season until late. Yeah, until the last maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And then I really caught on to the Devontae Smith, and my eyes were open to, this guy's he is the best player in college football. I was really focused on those quarterbacks for much of the season, and I thought Trask was doing more for his team than anybody else. And Trevor Lawrence, I just took out of the running because he had missed important games, not because of anything that he did negatively. But I thought Kyle Trask was doing more for his team as Florida was coming down the stretch, only had the 1 3-point loss, and before it kind of fell apart. But when it did fall apart, he made some pretty bad mistakes. He made some pretty bad throws against LSU, even though I don't blame him for that loss. There was all sorts of other stuff going on. But he made some poor decisions in that game. He made some poor decisions understanding the situation and the uphill challenge he had in the Cotton Bowl. He still made he allowed the situation, and this is asking a lot out of him, but he allowed the situation to get the best of him. And I didn't see Mac Jones get I just saw that he was unflappable. Now, at the same time, Mac Jones was playing with the lead and playing in front constantly.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. I actually think both were playing with elite receivers, because you look at like Tony and Pitts, those guys are going to be drafted fairly high, actually. Pitts is probably going to go in the first round, and I think Tony is probably going somewhere in the first, maybe the second round. And, also I think Grimes, their other receiver, was pretty talented too. So he had 3 really good targets to throw the ball to, as far as Trask is concerned. I look at Mac Jones' situation. Obviously, it starts with the best receiver in college football. I think maybe still the best running back. And they had some other receivers there that could make plays. And he didn't even have Jalen Waddle for most of the year. And, this was mentioned about Tua a year ago. And I think you can mention it about a lot of Alabama quarterbacks is and this goes back to what I've said to you before, Mark, is that how much is it just the talent that surrounds these quarterbacks? I mean, because you take a look at it, and, you know, obviously Tua was in a situation where he's going to end up last year having thrown the ball to maybe 4 first-round draft picks at wide receivers. Think about that for a second. Because Ruggs went in the first round, Judy went in the first round, and there's a very good chance that Waddle and Devontae Smith are going to go in the first round. So, you know, it kind of goes back to my question, is especially the quarterbacks that come out of the big-time schools, and I can say this about Justin Fields as well. How much is it just the product of the talent that's around them? When you build a really good offensive line, when you have elite wide receivers, when you're solid at running back, does that kind of diminish a little bit, especially, you know, now, I thought Joe Burrow had great talent around him a year ago, but I will say in watching Burrow throw, he did make a number of like tight window throws that I didn't see Jones or Tua have to make. They were kind of throwing to receivers down the field that seemed to have a fair amount of separation. Did you notice that difference as well?
I didn't necessarily notice that difference. The thing that I will say about Trask that I failed to mention in my evaluation of him in terms of not his pro potential at the time, but evaluating players as a Heisman candidate and why I loved him so much for most of the season, and he was my number one guy, in addition to everything I stated, was that he didn't have the support of Najee Harris in a running game, or a running game, fill in the blank, Trey Sermon, Travis Etienne. He basically, they just threw the ball almost every play, and it was all on him. So I just thought, again, the separation was that he just carried more than the quarterbacks he was being compared to. Now, when it comes to Fields, what I like about Fields is that even if he's having issues, I think the issue, if I'm reading this correctly and I'm reading between the lines, I think people are blowing out of proportion he can't read defenses and he's having issues and struggling reading defenses. Not that that's not a development component that he needs to work on to make this leap. Of course he does. I think people are just taking a couple off performances and a couple bad throws. And I believe in his intelligence. He's a very smart individual. So I think he's going to take to coaching, and I think he showed us so much down the stretch in both of his starting seasons at Ohio State in regards to playing through injuries, playing through adversity, and gutting it out and being a leader. I love that about him as well.
See, here's the thing, and I'll give you my evaluation on Field. I personally think that, number one, I think he would have benefited, like many college football players, from a full season this year. I think it would have allowed him to put, you know, a better body of work on the table if he would have gotten a chance to play, you know, 4 or 5 more football games this year. Number two, I think that one of the things, I don't think he struggles to read coverage. I actually think one of the biggest thing that impressed me when he first transferred in is his accuracy. Because obviously you didn't get a chance to see him throw the ball at Georgia unless it was in blowout. So he is a lot more accurate with the football than I think people give him credit for. He's, you know, got some really good arm talent that way. The other thing that I would point out is the one thing that I do think he struggles with, and this was even in 2019, I noticed this, Mark, and I don't know if this is, you know, struggling to read defenses. Sometimes I think he just holds on to the ball too long. And you know how they say that, you know, the pressure that a quarterback takes or the sacks that a quarterback takes is as much on the quarterback as it is the offensive line? You've heard that before, right, Mark?
Sure.
Okay. I think in a lot of instances, you know, some of the sacks, some of the pressures that he was taking was just him not getting rid of the ball quick enough. And he did have some struggles against the blitz. If you watched him, how he graded out against the blitz, he was not particularly great against the blitz. So those would be 2 concerns for me. I don't know if you noticed those things as well.
Yes, I think you're accurate in everything you just stated. I think everything that you just ran down is fair and a good assessment of when he struggled. I also tend to measure that against every other quarterback that we've ever seen, even from the greatest of all time. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
They struggle more against the blitz. They struggle more when they're pressured. All those things. The one concerning aspect of what you stated is that if in fact, and I do think that there's truth to it, that he holds on to the ball too long, well, he's going to hold on to he's going to have a propensity, unless he corrects that, to hold on to the ball even longer at the next level, because he's going to think guys are covered when he should be throwing the ball, because he's going to have less guys at less frequency that he considers at this point open.
Right. Well, one of the things they did in his best performance, which was easily against Clemson, is one of the underappreciated things that he did in that game, and I don't think this was pointed out enough. I know I mentioned it to you before, is he had like 3 or 4 passes where he went to the check down, or he went to his running back, which is a huge part of the NFL. Eventually, you have to, first read, second read, you have to check it down to your running back. And they don't do that a lot in college. Number one, they don't utilize in college a lot of passes to the tight end or a lot of passes to the running back. And I think that's one of the transitions to the NFL that's a differential, where you have to go through those progressions and you have to go to your check down. I think it's a big strength of Tom Brady's for years. You see that as a difference too?
I see as a difference in evaluating these quarterbacks versus what we evaluated years ago, is that the ball comes out of their hands so quickly that when you were running down the Alabama depth and talent at wide receiver and at Florida, that even 5 years ago and before then, wide receivers ran routes, running backs were available for checkdowns, and there was less just pop the ball in somebody's hands that will create. And that has given rise to the completion percentage going from the low to mid 60s to the mid to high 70s for a ton of these guys. And then, to your point, it's difficult sometimes to evaluate these collegiate quarterbacks that play at the best programs, because they're just simply getting the ball out of their hand, throwing a 4-yard pass, and then Devontae Smith makes 2 guys miss. And it's not just him, it's a zillion different guys that are almost as good, and they create a 22-yard gain, and that quarterback went 1 for 1 for 22 yards when he threw a ball that anybody in the world could throw, or anybody playing collegiate football. But the guy at Vanderbilt makes that throw, and they're playing Georgia, and the wide receiver gets thrown down for a 1-yard loss. So that comes into my mind as you run through some of these various factors that it would be great to get a better handle on. And one would be, again, that you brought light to, would be some type of metric, or not a metric. It would be kind of a post evaluation of, okay, these are the quarterbacks that have been selected in the NFL draft, and these are the ones who have succeeded, and to what degree. And this is the type of talent that surrounded them in college. Versus, a lot of guys that have succeeded in the NFL did not come from those kind of programs. Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco, and on down the line. Versus all the guys that you're talking about, and my goodness, outside of Deshaun Watson, and the Oklahoma players, Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Outside of those guys, I'm struggling to find the top-notch quarterbacks at those schools at the next level.
I agree with you. I think there's something too coming. And by the way, you make a good point with the wide receivers. Sometimes these guys, and that's kind of what I was saying too, is have such a talent advantage on the outside, they can just throw short passes to the wide receivers, and they can take it the distance, so they don't have to necessarily do check downs to the running backs or short passes to the tight end. But that's that does seem to be more a part of the passing concepts in the NFL versus the college game. That's really what I was trying to point out. But I think your point is well taken, because I was going to say that about small school quarterbacks, because in a lot of instances, like a Zach Wilson, you can say he's playing against lesser competition, but you can flip that around and saying he's obviously not playing with as much talent around him as Jones or Trask or Justin Fields. So you can go both ways with that.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to try to survey the drafts of the last 10 or 15 years and find those guys. Even though he gains a lot of criticism, the first guy that comes to mind is Jay Cutler, that played for actually the inverse, in which he had inferior talent playing against the best league in the country defensively, and being able to succeed past that and make himself a top-notch NFL prospect.
Well, I think that was also kind of what, Deshaun Watson because we talked about how good was the Clemson roster, like in 15 and 16, maybe compared to where it is nowadays. It wasn't quite as talented maybe so he did a little bit more of the heavy lifting then, you know what I mean? Compared to Trevor Lawrence, who was probably on a more talented roster, if we look at it, right, Mark?
Yeah, so I almost blanked out there for a second, but so Deshaun Watson was drafted about 15th, correct? 13th, something like that. And that was the Carson Wentz, Mitch Trubisky draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because I'm not a scout. David, throw the two of us in the same boat, that we understand football. We know football. We watched a ton of it in our lifetime, way too much more than we probably should have. So we know a lot. We know more than 99% of the people out there. But then there's that 0.5% that knows way beyond what we know, because they're scouts, they're coaches, and they see things that we don't see. Plus, we don't get the advantage of what they call the 22, the film where you see the full 22, because when we see a quarterback drop back to pass and he gets sacked, sometimes we're thinking, okay, did he hold on to the ball too long? Was anybody open? Did he have an opportunity, or what? But when I watched Deshaun Watson that year, and then it was after a great championship game, of course, and then through that entire offseason, I was just like, I just watched this guy for 2.5 seasons against, and in the most pressure situations against the best defense in the country, and I just see him making plays. Why is that not translating to be the best quarterback in the draft?
Right. Well, it's such a hit or miss that way, because, he won me over with his big game performances. But then I look at a Justin Herbert last year, and I wasn't necessarily impressed by his big game performances. But he goes into the NFL and plays extremely well. Yeah. So, it's tough to see that way, and that's where I was like, that was the one thing that I questioned about him a year ago was, I watched, 3 of their bigger games at Oregon last year, and I really didn't see it. I wasn't impressed with his game against Auburn, and I wasn't terribly impressed with his Rose Bowl against Wisconsin.
Nope.
His passing stats, and I'm sorry?
I'm right there with you, David. I'm sorry. Yes, continue.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, because I wasn't necessarily impressed with Herbert's passing stats in either one of those games last year. If you would pull up his passing stats against Auburn in 2019 and Wisconsin in that Rose Bowl, they weren't great. So, and I thought to myself, well, those are 2 of the better defenses he played, and he didn't look good. And I'm like, I really wonder how that's going to translate to the NFL. So that did give me some pause.
I was right there with you. That, despite winning the game, Oregon did not have 200 yards of total offense until the last drive of the game, and they were given a pretty questionable pass interference call that would have turned the ball back over to Wisconsin in good field position, and they only lost by 1 point to kick the field goal that would have won the game. But regardless, Oregon won the game, and Justin Herbert's, not him passing, the offense, total offense, was sitting around 150 yards in the final drive of that game. And I didn't think he played well either. Did Oregon disappoint, and did they underachieve at the wide receiver position during his time? They did. They did have some serious issues at wide receiver, but they weren't deplorably awful. They weren't the worst in the Pac-12. They were just marginal. There were better wide receiver units out there all over the place. They were dropping more than their fair share of passes. I remember Juwan Johnson being a culprit in particular. But still, he did not play well in those. He didn't play horribly. He just didn't play like a future NFL starting quarterback. I agree.
Right. Yeah, and then he steps into a situation. He's got two good wide receivers in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen with the Chargers. So it actually ended up working out where he fell though, to a team that gave him some receivers to throw the ball to.
And David, I'm going to state the obvious, but I think about this all the time. It would be, it's of course, it's a myth. It's not realistic. It's just impossible. But these players all play with different players, meaning quarterbacks. We're assessing quarterbacks right now. They all play with different offensive lines, different wide receivers. They're coached and developed by different people, different organizations, both at the college and the pro level. It would be fascinating to know what would have happened. Is Joe Montana the same quarterback if he doesn't go to Bill Walsh and the San Francisco 49ers,
Sure.
if he gets drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which was arguably the worst franchise in the league at that point? We'll just never know. Much of it is coaching and development, but it would be fascinating to know which quarterbacks just reaped so many benefits from coaching and development, and which ones were going to be great wherever they went.
Well, that's why I think sometimes slipping in a draft helps. I mean, say what you will about Aaron Rodgers in that draft. It helped that he slipped to Green Bay, I think.
Aaron Rodgers?
Brett Favre.
And what about Pat Mahomes?
Yeah, I think,
Patrick Mahomes going to Kansas
Mahomes.
City? Oh, my word.
Yep. Right. See, I thought it might help Haskins to slip, but then he slipped to a team like Washington. And I don't think the blame is still on Haskins, but that organization also has its dysfunction too, So, but well, as always, an interesting discussion with you as always, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Really good stuff, David. Thank you so much for the call.
Bye-bye.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, as it strikes 1 o'clock Eastern time here on the East Coast. And my apologies off the top. So this is what happened. And I understand nobody cares, but I'm going to vent just a bit. So start the show. If you see like the first 25 seconds, I assume I was talking and nobody could hear me because I was getting no levels on my audio board. So I'm like, why am I not getting audio levels? I was just recording last night, recording through StreamYard. Everything was great. Everything was working. So I take myself off air. I check everything: laptop settings, Rodecaster settings, audio board settings, volume controls, everything, test everything, try everything, go through everything. Everything's testing out. Get my man Marty on the line. He goes through everything. He's like, you got everything set correctly. And I'm like, yeah, what is going on here? And then he suggested the one thing that I thought of, because he said, you got everything, but you know what you should do, like you should do with anything. And for working at ESPN for 19 years, this typically turned out to be the solution when we called in all the engineers. Just shut everything down and turn it back on. Just reboot. And what do you think happened? Boop. The levels went to where they were supposed to be. Just shut everything down, turn it back on. There you go. So that's going to be at the start. That's going to be at the very top of my troubleshooting list next time. Just shut everything down, turn it back on. Boom. 80-90% of the time, that's the solution. All right. Again, didn't necessarily have a topic for today's show, but I did see a number of comments made on social media, I think stemming from the announcement that was made by somebody in the Alabama camp concerning anticipating playing in front of full stadiums in the fall. And I'm an ardent supporter of that. Now, of course, much could change, and much of the information could change between now and September 1st. But the way things are headed, the way things have progressed, both in regards to the immunity and the herding out there, coupled with the vaccination, which I have heard a number of reports, stands at about 1 million plus being vaccinated per day, then I believe we'll be in good shape. And I have my thoughts and feelings, certainly, my thoughts more so than my feelings, because somebody famous once stated that facts don't care about your feelings. My thoughts and what I have gathered about this entire pandemic mess. All right. As Uncle Stanley says, the SEC, I believe that's the name of the conference, the SEC will have full stadiums. The Big Ten will screw it up. Based on what we saw last year, Uncle Stanley, I would tend to agree that if there is going to be a screw up, it's going to be by the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. Because that's what they showed us last year. Double D541. What do you think of the home away agreements that were made? Oregon now has to go to Ohio State. So think about it. A year of college football has been erased in regards to non-conference scheduling. So instead of pushing everything back, which would have required all sorts of rescheduling, it appears as though, based on what I've seen, and that being the best example, that the agreement was just to skip 2020, go straight to 2021. And if you think about it, it makes total sense in terms of rescheduling opportunities down the road to say, we're not going to try to, it would be foolish to say, okay, Ohio State and Oregon signed a 2-year contract to play back-to-back a home and home series. Well, they missed the 2020, so they're going to play 2020 in 2021. And then what happens to the 2021? Well, it gets pushed into 22. Well, it can't, because Ohio State has a full 22 schedule, and so does Oregon. So they're just going to have to look for an opportunity, because it would have been idiotic to try to push the schedule, because you would have been pushing 10 years of schedules. No, you just say 2020's gone. Now let's figure out what we need to do. Now, there's not been an announcement by either school as to what that is that I'm aware of. I'm sure we would have talked about that had there been some announcement there. I'm trying to think of any other home and home series from 2020. That was supposed to be the second year of the LSU Texas series. No. Yeah. So LSU and Texas played in the Joe Burrow National Championship season in 2019 in Austin. Great game. Ellinger and Burrow 45-38 game. They were supposed to play this past season in 2020. Yeah, in Baton Rouge. I don't know what's happening with that game. But again, if they would have said, if all these teams, and this again is an issue because there is no committee, there is no scheduling component that centralizes everything. Everybody's running around signing their own contracts and playing whomever they want and signing 15 years down the road. So it's just a dilapidated, dysfunctional system to begin with. But that makes total sense. If you follow me, I get your point. You're wondering what's going to happen. Oregon got ripped off of a home date with Ohio State. Well, the two schools are going to have to work that out. But if you had a centralized system, they would work out the whole thing and coordinate it all. It would all be tied in together, and they could look at the big picture and how everything affects something else. These schools aren't going to do that. They're just going to figure out their own schedule, and it will have a domino effect on other schedules. But everybody's just creating their own schedule. So that's what we've got. Levi believes that the Midwest will have full stadiums unless something happens. Our man John's on the line here. He says that the Notre Dame AD, which would be Jack Swarbrick, was interviewed today. Probably worth discussing. He's delusional. to some degree, thinks Notre Dame is basically there already. Well, depending on the context of the conversation and how it was presented. I don't know. I can't speak to his comments because I haven't seen them. And I wouldn't want to just see a quote from him because, again, in this day and age of social media and 8-second sound bites, we see and hear way too much that's taken out of context. Generally, much more important things than Notre Dame's football program. Rod Favre is telling us that the soft Big Ten and Pac-12 administrations will never allow full stadiums this fall. My man, Alan V. Alan V, just show up. Just show up and take part in the conversation. He loves to take his jabs. Yeah, from everything we know about Michigan's president, he's not real interested in sports. Which should definitely be a consideration by these universities that bring in a ton of money from sports. And when we say sports, we mean football. Football, number one, men's basketball to a small degree. And then there's a few schools in the South that make some money on baseball, but basically football. There's a disconnect there many times, and we saw it in the Big Ten this year, and it created a mess. There's a disconnect between what the population in that region values and what they believe, and then the coaches and players versus the elite. I'll put that in quotes, the elite. They're really not the elite, but considers themselves the elite. The elite, the presidents and the boards and the regions, their priorities and their view of life and view of culture and view of all sorts of things within our society. There's a huge gap there. And I believe that the biggest gap belongs in the Big Ten. I think that was played out during this pandemic process between June of last year and the decision to play or delay the football season. The ACC knew what it was doing. The ACC and the SEC were the most decisive. The Big 12 lagged a little bit, but not to its detriment. I don't know, maybe they were being slightly more calculated or they were playing off the lead of the SEC and the ACC. But the SEC and the ACC very much have leadership that is in touch with and in tune with and on the same page as their constituents. The Pac-12 does as well, but to the other end of the spectrum. The big disconnected conference is the Big Ten, because the heart and soul of the Big Ten, the populations of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, in that portion of the country versus and their values versus the people that make the decisions at those universities and within those conferences, that's where the gap in perspective is. Alan V, bringing one back from the past. That wasn't Bill Polian. That wasn't one of the Ursays. It was a Colts general manager. Oh my goodness, who stated that? It was a Colts general manager, and why can't I think of his name? Was it Bill Polian? No, it wasn't Bill Polian, because then he worked for ESPN. And it wasn't one of the Ursays. Give me a name, or I'm going to look that up. And I'm going to kick myself when I get the name, because I've known it for years. Gator Gang believes that Zach Wilson will be a bust. Easy to look good when you play lackluster talent. Okay. We could sit here for hours and list the quarterbacks who played with inferior talent and against inferior talent and succeeded in the NFL. So, start with Josh Allen. So think about us trying to evaluate quarterbacks and project them to the next level. And then think about the guys that get paid a ton of money to do it and who are professionals. And like David and I discussed a few minutes ago, the wealth of football knowledge that they have, and they get it wrong more than half the time. More than half the quarterbacks that are drafted first round in the NFL draft, I would consider to be not successful. I'll stop short of saying they're failures. I hate to call anybody a failure that signed an NFL contract and went out and played, but they did not meet expectations. They did not become a capable starting quarterback in the NFL. We could go through every NFL draft, and maybe we will. Why don't we do that? And assess how good these guys are. We could come up with about 4 categories. They're either elite, great, Hall of Fame players, number 1, or they are number 2, quality starting quarterbacks in the NFL, or number 3, they are players that at least stuck around the league, had some spot starts, contributed, were decent backups, or category number 4, just complete busts. Just were not in the league for long, threw 28 passes in the league, just contributed nothing, went to about 3 teams, never caught on, just nothing. Hey, Ballard, I see you in there. Mark, did them people make good on my bet for you, brother? Oh, my goodness, that's right. Aesthetics Hardstyle. If I remember this correctly, Aesthetics Hardstyle took Alabama against the field at some point late in the college football season. He had a few takers, and he was donating the money that he was winning to the Voice of College Football. I have no idea where that went. Aesthetics Hardstyle. I haven't seen you for a long time. You better get after some people. I hope you took notes. Or if you could point me, if you could find the links to the shows, I'd figure out who those people are. All right. Let's go back. What? A few drafts? Go back to the 17 draft. Oh, man. That's too hard to read. Okay. Here we go. First round, 2017 NFL draft. Second overall pick, Mitchell Trubisky, Chicago Bears. I'd put him in category number 3. He's a contributor. He's not elite by any stretch. He's not even a capable, solid NFL starting quarterback. He's a guy that's getting spot starts. I know that he's been the starter, but I'm rating the level of play. I'll put him in category number 3. He's between 2 and 3, but I'll give him a 3 that he's a journeyman type of NFL quarterback, somewhere between starter and quality backup. Then we've got in the 10th selection, Patrick Mahomes. Okay. Okay, Patrick Mahomes. all-time great already. Deshaun Watson in the 12th spot. I'll put him he's somewhere between the 1 and 2 categories. Right now, I'll say he's in the 2 category. He's a very capable starter, very good starter. Who was the next quarterback taken? So it was those guys, and then the next quarterback that was taken in the 2017 draft was Deshawn Kaiser by the Cleveland Browns at 52nd, and he turned into somewhere between the 3 category and basically the 4. He was the starter for the Browns, then he went to the Packers and fizzled out, and I don't know if he's still active, but he's a non-factor. But once you get lower in the draft, you consider, then you have to weigh the draft position versus the success of the career. So we're not going to go through the whole draft, but there's the first 2 rounds of the 2017 draft. And I don't know how long we're going to do this because may get a little arduous here. In the 2016 draft. Okay, that was I was mixing up 16 and 17. I put Wentz with Trubisky. Yeah, that was the Myles Garrett draft in 17, and then Trubisky. Of course, it was Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. So Jared Goff would be in he's floating between the 2 and 3 categories. Capable NFL start. Let's put him there. Took a team to a Super Bowl, and he's had some really good seasons. So even though he's faltered a bit at times, Jared Goff's a number 2 guy. Carson Wentz is the guy that's fluctuating between 2 and 3. He's really in decline at this point, but he's somewhere between 2 and 3. But he's led teams to the playoffs. We'll put him in the 2nd category. And then we've got nobody drafted a quarterback until Paxton Lynch, Denver. Okay, he's sliding in that 4 category. He's not doing much of anything. Christian Hackenberg, bust, 51st by the Jets in the 16 draft. All right, those are the first 2 rounds. Let's go one more year. The 2015 draft. That was the Jameis Winston draft and Marcus Mariota. So Jameis Winston would be in he's sliding somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd categories of capable starter versus contributing backup spot starter. Marcus Mariota would be the same guy. They're very different quarterbacks, but he would be pretty much on the same level, although he played for a run-oriented offense, and therefore he didn't have and has not posted the stats that Jameis Winston has. And obviously Marcus Mariota lost his job, but he was a capable starter, decent marginal starter for 3 or 4 years. So the first 2 picks of the 15 draft went to quarterbacks, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, and then there was not a quarterback drafted until Garrett Grayson to New Orleans on the 75th pick. Well, he's turned into nothing. Okay. All right. So just some thoughts about the NFL draft and the quarterback situation. All right, let's see what you guys have in the live chat here. Ronan's got some good lines going today. Todd. Aesthetics Hard Style is telling us that Penn State always has a hard schedule. No crowd killed a lot of teams, in my opinion. Penn State traditionally has scheduled difficult. They have created for themselves difficult schedules. They've gone after and I'm talking historically, I'm talking Joe Paterno, Penn State. They have gone after the Florida State games and the Alabama and Nebraska games and USC and all of those teams. But under James Franklin, they're playing Auburn this year. They played Joe Paterno and Penn State, played Alabama in 2010 and 11. But, man, Penn State went through some seasons where they played Pitt, I think, 4 consecutive years, which, that's a decent Power 5 game. And it's a different situation because they wanted to restore the rivalry, or at least give fans a taste of what it used to be. But a lot of UCF, and they did not play a Power 5 opponent out of conference a couple times under James Franklin. So I don't know that Penn State has been scheduling difficult recently. Not really. This past season, they were supposed to go to Blacksburg and play Virginia Tech. Hey, Joel. Thank you so much for the thumbs up and reminding everybody else to hit the thumbs up. If you enjoy the content, others will as well. So please share the videos as well on social media. I just basically make this deduction. If people are watching the videos or engaging in the live streams, then you got to figure that it would be great if others had that opportunity. And if they knew that we were here talking college football every day. Therefore, there are people on Twitter and Facebook, zillions of people out there that have no idea that I exist or that we are here talking college football every day. So please share the videos out there. All right, the Rod Farva wants us to break down 2004 like we did 1996. So I want everybody to keep in mind that there's a business side to this. Well, basically the entire thing's a business because I've poured everything into this. So I need people to watch the videos. So I have produced how many of these things? So go watch them. 1983, 84, 90, 96, 2000. So I've done 5 of these. 83, 84, 90, 96, 2000. Yes, I've done 5 disputed national championship videos that I love. The feedback, the reviews have been amazing. So I love and I'm thankful that you guys appreciate those, but there's not a whole lot of people watching them. I just did 1997 by request the other day, and it has yet to post. I'm going to post it here in the next few days. So I did 1997. So maybe I'll break out 2004 because they don't take me a whole lot of time, but still it's really not worth my time if we're going to get like 500 views. So unfortunately, the Rod Farva, I would want to do, and I truly want to do every season. If people would watch them, I would start with 2020. And I know it doesn't appear to be a disputed national championship. I get it. But believe me, it actually is to a certain extent. Ooh. Got myself a stock alert. That even 2020, there are things to discuss. Not that I'm disputing Alabama clearly won the national championship. Of course they did. They went undefeated. They only played SEC opponents. They basically played all good opponents. Notre Dame, Ohio State, they won it fair and square. Not disputing that. But because of the screwed up playoff process, there is an argument as to whether Notre Dame should have been included, did not win a conference, lost a playoff, lost a postseason conference championship game in blowout fashion, or that should have been Texas A&M, or should have been Oklahoma, or should have been Cincinnati. That's what the argument is, even when the national champion is credible. So I could go through every season. If there was a response for it, I would go through every year and have a great time doing it. I'd go from 2020 all the way back to whenever. Certainly back to 1936, the first poll season. Aesthetics hard style. I got to catch up with this. Oh, got it right here. Oh, love this. Okay. Aesthetics hard style. Here we go. So this was sometime late in the season, right? Aesthetics hard style. It was prior to the playoff, of course, but it might have been late in the season that he basically said, Alabama's winning this whole thing. I will stake my money on it. Alabama's going to win this whole thing. And I'm taking bets. You get the field. You get everybody. Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, and maybe even at the time, whomever else could have possibly made it. You get them all. I'll take Alabama. And if you win, great. I'll pay you. If I win, then you got to pay that money to the voice of college football. So Aesthetics Hard Style, thank you for being a great forecaster of college football. Like myself in this case, my preseason prediction was Alabama over Ohio State in the national championship game. Go back and check out the videotape on that one. So according to Aesthetics Hardstyle, I've not verified this myself, but we are placing our trust in Aesthetics Hardstyle. He says that Dennis Harry, Michael Hogue, and Johnny Bays all bet him Alabama versus the field, and they are needing to pay up. So we'll leave it to you boys. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Hope everything's going well. Aesthetics Hard Style. We missed you. And so thanks for joining back in. Got a call coming in here. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why that dropped, but please call back. Bill O'Brien, based on what he did at Penn State and his first few years with the Texans, when he first joined the Texans and he was taking them to the playoffs, I thought he had everything going. And since then, yeah, he's made a lot of bad decisions. It just seems to rub people the wrong way. So that's a brilliant coaching career gone bad for Bill O'Brien. Let's toast media. Let's go. Hey, Sasha. How are you? Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining in. Appreciate the super chat contribution as well. Thank you so much for that. Glad that you enjoyed the channel and enjoy the show. Support Mark. Love the show. Go Canes. So I think some Miami fans aren't necessarily pleased with me right now, and I'm not going to go into why, but I will say that I'm going to head over to the Miami channel sometime in the next week when I can find some time. We're going to go on the Miami channel, and I will announce this well ahead of time, and we'll do a live stream on the Miami channel. I'll take your calls, and I will address a lot of the comments that were made on the Miami channel. We'll do that soon. Tobin, yes, that was Vince Tobin. Thank you so much, David. I knew it wasn't Bill Polian because I've got his face in my mind, and Bill Polian is one of the great GMs in the history of the NFL. Plus, he then worked with Mel Kiper at ESPN. So I knew it wasn't Polian, even though he was with the Bills for a long time. And I knew it wasn't one of the Ursays, and I could not come up with a name. Thank you. Yes. Exactly. David, we need to touch base soon. The 93 Huskers were robbed. Well, the 93 Huskers basically missed a field goal. That's what happened there. And there might have been a play late in that game that you're alluding to that I'm forgetting. Was there a possible pass interference in that game? So basically, Nebraska was undefeated. So was Florida. No, Florida State lost a game to Notre Dame. Notre Dame was robbed. Notre Dame was the team that should be claiming a national championship in 1993. Maybe I need to do that year. But I don't know that the Huskers were robbed. But I do remember a controversial call late in the Orange Bowl. But Nebraska played a good game against Florida State. 18-16, I believe, was the final score. 18-16 Florida State, and Nebraska got into field goal range, but they badly missed one from a long ways away, especially back then. It was probably a 54-yarder. And so Nebraska would have to wait one more year for its national championship under Tom Osborne. Dominic, Cheryl, good to see you. As always, you know that. Yes, Bill Tobin. Yes, I remember Bill Tobin well, and Vince. I know that Florida State was good in 1993, but they lost one game, and Notre Dame lost one game, and the two teams played head-to-head. Now, if that's not a championship scenario outside of an actual playoff, I don't know what one is. Mike, I understand your football evaluation is that Florida State deserved the title, but we could make all sorts of evaluation. I'll make an evaluation right now. Ohio State had the best team in the country in 2015, but they lost the wrong game, missed the playoffs, couldn't go to the Big Ten championship game. Therefore, they were left out of the playoff, and rightfully so. And so they didn't get to play for the national championship. But I'm telling you right now, Ohio State had the best team in 2015. Okay. What good does that do? They shouldn't have played for the national championship, though. I'll say the same thing here. And this is actually more of a valid statement. Florida State and Notre Dame played in 1993. Now, if Notre Dame would have gone 9-3, well, then that doesn't matter. We're talking about two teams with the same record, and they both played difficult schedules. If anything, Notre Dame played a more difficult schedule. Notre Dame won the game head-to-head. They should be the national champion. It's insane that there were actually people voting back then, as it is today, that could actually write down Florida State #1 and Notre Dame #2 that year. It's insane. I'm going to post a video. I got to post a video on this. Now, I need to do a 1993 video. That's all there is to it, because it's just insane the more and more I think about it, especially after Florida State. Florida State would have gone out and just crushed Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. They would have beaten them 48-3. I would still be sitting here 28 years later saying Notre Dame should have won the national championship. They won head-to-head over Florida State. They won the national championship. I would still be saying the same thing. But Florida State barely squeaked by, and they were outplayed in that game against Nebraska. Notre Dame is the national champion of 1993. Okay. I don't know what we're going to do, because I just don't have the time or the resources to post every year and go through the entirety of college football, because we just don't get the response. People aren't watching videos about 1993, even though I get into that. People want to know who the top 5 reasons Alabama's not going to win the SEC this year. They like those kind of videos. But maybe we'll sit here all night some night, and we'll go through the entirety of college football. We'll go through the history of college football. We'll sit here all night and basically just go through every year. Maybe that's what we need to do. I just don't understand anybody who can defend Florida State being awarded. They didn't win. They were awarded the national championship in 1993. That's the other thing. We've got to correct our verbiage. Number one, it's not a playoff. It's an invitational. Number two, Many of these teams did not win national championships. They were awarded the national championship. They may have deserved it. They accomplished. They won games to put themselves in a position to be awarded the national championship. But 2013, Florida State went undefeated. We had multiple teams with one loss. Well, Auburn was awarded that spot in the championship game. Michigan State had the same credentials as Auburn. They won a conference championship and were 13-1 and actually had a more reasonable loss than Auburn did by 2 touchdowns against LSU. So Auburn was awarded that position to play for a national championship in 2013. They just were. In 2004, USC and Oklahoma were awarded. Now, they earned it. They won all the games. They earned a position to play in the national championship game. Let's even discount that title. It's not a national championship game. Actually, it's a BCS championship game. They were given or awarded based on their excellence of winning all the games, but Auburn did the same thing. So Auburn fans who might be mad at me for discrediting to a certain extent their 2013 BCS championship game appearance, they could have been playing in the 2004 BCS championship. Blake, I've said this many times. If I was involved or in any way connected to the Auburn administration, athletic department, football program, I would hang a banner for 2004. You won the SEC championship. You won every game. What else can we do? I'd hang a banner. I'd put right on it. 2004 national champions. Undefeated national champions. I had no issue with UCF doing that, even though I did not. Now, people misunderstand me sometimes. I did not believe that in 2017 that UCF was the best team in the country. I didn't even think they were one of the 5 best teams in the country, but they did everything they possibly could. So I had no issue with their big parade and all the things that they did, hanging a banner. But certainly Auburn should do that for 2004. Okay, that's good information. I remember those games, the Rod Farva. I remember those games where Auburn lost to USC the previous 2 seasons, but we're not awarding a national championship for 3 seasons. That has nothing to do with what happened in 2004. I hope you're just posting that to lay the facts out there. But that had nothing to do with how 2004 should be evaluated. This is what happened in 2004. USC and Oklahoma were 1-2 in the preseason poll. I can almost guarantee that. They were either 1-2 or 2-1 in the preseason poll. And I believe Auburn was 19th. So there was absolutely nothing that happened on the field that determined who was going to play in the national championship game. The BCS championship game. What determined that it was going to be USC and Oklahoma were the preseason rankings that Auburn basically went, kept winning. Then they just went, they hit a ceiling, number 3, and nobody would let them surpass 1 or 2. And I'd be saying the same thing if Auburn would have been selected to play and Oklahoma would have been, or USC would have been undefeated. I would have said, well, we got a stupid system where we're not talking about Cincinnati's undefeated. And I even go to bat for the Cincinnati's and UCFs and Boise States of the world. But we're talking about a team that won the SEC championship. I'm hanging a banner if I'm Auburn. It's just beyond ridiculous. Aesthetics Hard Style loves the channel, but Mark and I going to disagree on Big Ten power. Always a follower, though. Thanks for the channel, Mark. Yeah, we should discuss the Big Ten power. I don't know what we're going to discuss, but we will. It's the second best conference in the country, at least as it stands right this second. I could change my mind after 2 weeks of the 2021 season. Patrick is saying Auburn did something USC and Oklahoma did not do in 2004. They played an FCS opponent. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Patrick, Auburn also did something that USC did not do in 2004. They played for and they won a conference championship game. USC didn't play a conference championship game. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports. How you doing?
McD, what's going on?
I'm doing good. You?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
So, I'm calling up to talk about just every schedule has been released besides the Pac-12, and I don't know if Mountain West has been released or not. So, I'm hoping for a real college football season, not just these conference only schedules. But I want to talk about the Pac-12, and I have a bold take here. Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but I'm focused. I'm concentrating. McD, go to it.
I'll speak up a little bit then. I think that the Washington Huskies will win the Pac-12 this year.
Okay.
I think they're better than Oregon. They won the Pac-12 North last year. I honestly don't think they're a top 10 team in the Pac-12, and I think in Washington they bring back I think all 11 starters in offense, if I'm not mistaken. So I really feel like they're going to be the better team. Oregon's going to be trying out a new quarterback, most likely Anthony Brown, who's a transfer from Boston College. He's okay, but I just think Washington's the better team, honestly.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I haven't really taken a deep dive into Washington, but somebody called, or I was talking to somebody offline, and I was having a similar thought about I'm really going to have to evaluate Oregon and Washington now that Tyler Shook, and it came up because, of the Tyler Shook transfer and looking at Anthony Brown, who had a 20 touchdown, 8 interception season for Boston College. He's capable. He's mobile. He's a decent middle of the road Pac-12 quarterback. I would say there will probably be 5 or 6 quarterbacks better than him in the conference and 5 or 6 worse. So he's not a game changer by any stretch, or he would have won the position over Tyler Shook, who was not. He was decent. Again, Tyler Shook didn't have a great season. He turned the ball over too much. He was okay. I don't know why he left. But, I would agree with your assessment. Jacob Sermon was the backup quarterback. I'm trying to think. We were looking up the starting quarterback for Washington last season. He got his first playing time. Oh my word! I'm losing his name, but anyway, it should be an interesting. I do think that those are the two teams to look out for in that division.
I also think USC is coming out of the Pac-12 South. I know some people are saying Arizona State and Utah. I personally don't see Utah. I don't see why people are saying that. Arizona State. We'll see, but I think USC comes out, and I think Washington beats USC in a Pac-12 championship game. I also have one other bold case for you, and I think that the Auburn Tigers are going to miss out of a bowl game and go 5-7.
You said Auburn.
Yeah, I just looked at their schedule like an hour ago. I don't think they'll make a bowl game. That schedule is really tough.
It is, of course. They've got Georgia, and I believe there are other games against South Carolina on the other side of the SEC. They've got Penn State. Yeah, I think that Bo Nix needs to improve considerably, and the offensive line is subpar. They've got a good defense. Their defensive line has been one of the best in the country for the past few years, but it's going to take a significant fall off as well. So that's a pretty bold take, but I would not be surprised if you were right.
I mean, I look at the schedule. I was here in front of me. I think they lose to Penn State, LSU, Georgia, Arkansas, A&M. They'll split between Mississippi State and South Carolina, and they'll lose to Bama. I do think they win that Ole Miss game, though. I think that'll be like a one big win.
Yeah, I think. Yep.
Okay. But I'm just hoping we have a normal season. I see you have the title stadium full. I think in the SEC and the Big 12 and ACC, you'll see that for the most part. The stadium's full, but not so much in the Big 10 and the Pac-12. That's what I'm thinking. So we'll see.
Okay, McD. Anything else?
No, I just called up to give you two bold takes. I was just looking at some schedules. Two bold takes.
All right, sir. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Give yourself a good day.
I think I'll call Good Turk. You too.
All right. Appreciate everybody jumping on the line here. And again, my apologies off the top. Audio issues pushed us back, but it's good that we got everyone together to talk some college football today. I'm always looking for topics during the off season. So keep it in mind that we can just get on here and talk college football every day, talk and take your calls. You guys ultimately produce the show. You determine what we talk about. But I do like to go into each show with a topic. So if you've got any interesting topics, of course, the news of the day is going to push to the top, just like it did on Sunday when we had Alan Bowman transferring from Texas Tech to Michigan. We had Michigan signing a 5-star cornerback in Will Johnson. We had Florida State, Ohio State, Texas, all with significant commitments. And we also had Eric Gilbert transferring out of Florida after spending all of 4 weeks in Gainesville, if he even was in Gainesville at any point. So the news of the day obviously is going to take precedence, but when it's a quiet day like today, certainly we will take your suggestions on what the topic of the day should be. But you produce the show is what it comes down to. Join us on Patreon. It's 16 cents per day, folks. 16 cents per day. Do the math. It's $5 per month over on Patreon. Exclusive live streams, watch parties, insider look at the voice of college football, your recommendations, your requests. A lot of good stuff going on over there during the college football season. My predictions exclusively on Patreon as it stands right now. And we are looking to upgrade our delivery there. But a lot of people that join us on Patreon just simply say, Mark, this is contribution for what you do on YouTube. But that doesn't mean that we won't be delivering quality content on Patreon. We did a live stream there last Friday, about 10 days ago. All right. Also, please subscribe. Please tell others that we're here talking college football every day. So there are folks that you deal with and talk to and connect with on social media every day that have no idea that we're here talking college football. So please let them know. And of course, hit the like button on your way out as well. I've got some records coming up this afternoon dealing with Florida State and Iowa State. And we will outline the rest of the day soon in terms of live streams and so forth. Also had a college student reach out to me yesterday who wants to interview me for their sports media class. So that should be an interesting, that happens every so often. So certainly happy to discuss what I've seen and experienced in, I kind of cringe when I say this, 30 years. All right, everyone. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Again, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App to contribute here at the Voice of College Football. And, of course, the Super Chat's on as well. Appreciate all of you. We will see you soon. Keep that bell lit up for the notifications to know when we're going live and uploading new content.